Hey friends. It's been a hot minute for one very, very big reason. The day I am recording this, I don't know what day I'm going to post, but the day I'm recording this, it is Friday, the 26th of April, 9:30 p.m. I am home. Peter is not. Casper and Augie are home. Felix is not. All the big stuff has happened. Let me backtrack. On Saturday, the 13th, we hosted Casper's birthday party. He just turned 7 on Tuesday. So on the 13th, he had some friends over. We had a dragon or how to train your dragon themed birthday party. Peter put a lot of work into creating a 4-foot-long toothless night fury that he hung here above the kitchen table. I worked very hard on sewing up 6 pairs. We only ended up using 5 because one of the kiddos didn't come. 6 pairs of dragon wings. We ordered fabric paint. We also ordered a big jug of glue and some Elmer's Magic liquid and a variety of sequins or dragon scales and a big thing of black glitter. And the kids made slime. It was a thing. It was a mess. But they had a good time. The weather was good. Oh my god, I'm tired. The weather was good, so they went and played out on the trampoline. They went down to the basement to play on the climber. They just run amok. Peter painted a big red dragon. And then he and Casper painted some flames on different bits of cardboard. So then they did pin the flame on the dragon. They had fun. Nobody won any prizes. I didn't have it in me to make prizes. It's fine. But yeah, so we did that on Saturday. And then Sunday, we did some family photos. I'll include some sneak peeks. They're not like the fully edited ones, but there's sneak peeks, and it's been getting me through these last 2 weeks, let me tell you. So that was an adventure. It was a good time. I am so excited for the official photos to print them and decorate. And then we came home, and Peter's mom and brother came over because they were going to hold down the fort. They got Casper to school on Monday morning. They got Augie to daycare on Monday, paying for daycare anyways. And he gets some socialization. His day is more normal. And we took Felix to the hospital for stage 1. So if you've been following along for any length of time, or if you're checking in for updates, Felix was scheduled for a 2-stage brain surgery. Stage 1 happened on Monday the 15th. We had to be there for 8. And then I took him into the OR. I held him while they put the gas mask on and he fell asleep. The whole team sang Twinkle Twinkle, which was really, really sweet. They drilled 11 holes into his skull, mostly here. But then he had 2 a little bit further back, 1 on this side, and then 2 leads that don't get drilled in but just go under the surface of the skin as reference or grounds. And then they fed electrodes in through those holes, and those sit on the surface of the brain. That was a 4 to 5 hour procedure. Peter and I are both not sleeping over at the hospital every night, obviously, because we have 2 other children that have places to be, people to see, and we also have a house that we have to manage. They hooked him up the next day because by the time he got out and into his room and everything, EEG was already done for the day, which is fine. So they got him out, and then it was our job to keep him in the bed, which meant he was on video. So the EEG machine has a big video camera at the top. Think like one of those black half-dome security cameras, but it's one of those, and it's attached to the computer. Then this cable comes off of the computer into a bag, and then this thick, maybe this big around, collection of cords and leads and wires come off of that, and they wrap gauze around it and tape it up really good so it's all contained. And all of those leads get hooked up to the leads that come out of Felix's head. Then that gets wrapped up. So his head is wrapped, then the leads where they're all attached is wrapped, and they stick that on top, and then they wrap it all together with some gauze. And then you have this big cord or collection of cords coming off. So he could not leave the bed. And if you know Felix doesn't like to stay in one place. Felix likes to move and groove and do it quite quickly. So the expectation that we had based on phone conversations was 1 week. So Monday the 15th, he was having this done, and then the following Monday, the 22nd, he would be going back to the operating room for whatever surgery the team and Peter and I decided would be happening. At that point, the layout was best case scenario. Worst case scenario was something kind of in the middle. Refresher. Best was just the left frontal lobe. Worst was the whole left side. Middle was an anterior 2/3 disconnect, which means saving the occipital lobe and thus hopefully saving his vision. So by Thursday, we were doing okay. He was starting to get pretty agitated, but we were doing our best, giving him lots of snacks and Blue's Clues, anything to keep him in the bed, hitting that button anytime he had a seizure, writing down the time, describing the seizure, making sure he was in view of the video camera so that they had a recording. On Thursday, the teams came, so the EEG team came, the neurology comprehensive epilepsy clinic team came, and they stimmed his brain. So their hope with that was two things: to possibly / hopefully induce some seizures to see exactly where they're coming from, and to also map out what those different areas of his brain were responsible for in terms of like function. So where was motor function? Where was speech? If possible. Obviously, given that Felix is not great at following complex directions, but we did manage to get him to talk during part of it when they needed, so that was good. And then they finished that. That was like 2.5 hours. He was given half an Ativan and some Benadryl during that time because he was starting to get really itchy with his head having been wrapped up. That night, he managed to twice in a split second each time. I felt so awful. He ripped the dressings off. So by the end of him playing with it, like I had him in a death grip, he was just thrashing his head side to side because he was getting so irritated. And then all of his leads were exposed. So between me and 2 other nurses, we held him. And then one nurse wrapped him up as best as possible because unfortunately, because the timing of things is never great, the neurosurge fellow and resident were both in the operating room at the other hospital across town for a trauma. So I mean, like, obviously that is important. But I didn't want Felix hurting himself and pulling leads out of his head and out of his skull. So that was not great. Luckily, we gave him some Benadryl and his melatonin, and it calmed him, and he fell asleep. And then 6 hours later, the fellow came, and she painstakingly removed all of the gauze, and we rewrapped everything. And then we realized that he had, unfortunately, pulled out one of the ground leads, or like reference point leads. So for those 6 hours, luckily he didn't have a ton of seizures at that time. The signal was just garbage. Like, it was just garbage. So then she texted one of the EEG people who just happened to be awake. So they talked to figure out what we needed to do. So we had to unwrap part of him. And we reconnected to the other reference point because they had put in 2, and it cleared everything up. So then wrapped him back up. And then Friday, the EEG team came in the afternoon, and we had asked if they're not going to do any stimming until possibly Monday, could we please have him unhooked for the weekend? Because they've already gotten a ton of seizures recorded and on video. They didn't need any more seizures. But the reason that, like, they weren't sure if they were going to stim him again to get more information that way. So there was kind of like some hemming and hawing about that. But they were like, no, okay, fine. So 1 o'clock rolls around. Felix was finally free. So we put his boots and braces on, his little pajamas, and we went on an adventure around the hospital. We went and got some treats. We saw some people. It was fantastic. We got out. And then at that point on, he was allowed to like move around. So we went to the smile room, which is a sensory room or a snozzling, I think that's how you say it, snozzling room. It's a sensory room, so it's got a lot of like LED lights, lots of sensory equipment. I absolutely adore it in there. I could spend ages in there. Felix likes to run back and forth, and he likes the bubble tubes, but he really, really likes the phone, the light switches, and both sinks, because of course he does. So this is obviously a longer update than I was expecting, but there's a lot that's happened in the last 2 weeks. So then weekend happens. Peter tackled the weekend. I'm tackling this coming weekend, most of it. Oh, I'm so tired. I took Augie and Casper for a visit on Saturday briefly, and then brought them home. Sunday I kept them home. We went to the park. We went grocery shopping, the usual home things. And then I went back on Monday, and it was decided on the weekend. A couple of things were decided. Some official, some unofficial. Were decided on last Saturday. 20th? Yeah. So they decided they weren't going to do any more stimming because they had the information they needed. And also because of what they had seen on some of the most recent diagnostics, what they had seen with the initial stim and all of his seizures, they were pretty sure they knew what the surgical plan was going to be at that point. But they couldn't confirm anything because neurology had to speak with neurosurgery and discuss everything and then come to a conclusion before talking to us about it. Cue the longest 3 or 4 days of our lives. So Peter gave me that news via text message on Saturday because he was minding a Felix. I was minding Augie and Casper. Doesn't leave a lot of time for like video chats and phone calls. And he found that out after we had left. So it's just easier for him to like shoot me an email, whatever. So we did talk about it a little bit in the evening. I talked with my mom about it because it was just sort of like, not everybody's got to talk about stuff, but for me to process, I need to talk. It's what I do. Arguably, it's what I do best. So then Tuesday rolls around and we wait and we wait. And then, oh man, Peter gets there after dropping the kids where they had to go. And 10:30 rolls around, 11-ish. And everybody piles into our room. Luckily, we had a private room. I think initially we had a private room because the fact that Felix was on video. But the room was packed. We had social work. I think we had 3 or 4 nurses from the different teams. We had our neurologist, our neurology fellow, who's an absolute doll. We had the neurosurgeon. We had the neurosurgery fellow. We had the neurosurgery resident. And maybe someone else. I don't know. It was a packed house. It was a full house. They whip out their laptop. Felix is like, hi, hello, guy. He wants people to leave. And we're like, Felix, we're going to put on Blue's Clues for you because Mommy and Daddy really need to listen to this presentation. So they whip out their laptop and they start, talking about what they've seen. Neurology, not the surgeon. Neurology starts talking about what they've seen on the EEGs and with the stim. And then they pull up a sort of like a mock-up, a 3D mock-up of Felix's brain. There's like a legend with, these are where the leads are. These are where the seizures are starting. And then an arrow pops up. This is where the seizure's going, literally within like a second. So initially, we thought the seizures were starting from the left frontal lobe, like at the front of the left frontal lobe. Then during some of the seizures that we recorded, some of the seizures were starting actually in the motor cortex. And we had hoped, oh my goodness, we had hoped that the surgery could be sparing the sensory motor cortex so he wouldn't end up with a huge deficit. At that point, when we found out that some of the seizures were starting in the motor cortex, we knew motor function was going to go. Well, we were hopeful that we'd be able to save some other things. You see where I'm going with this? Yeah. So they're explaining where the seizures are originating from. There are 3 zones. And you have to think too, they did not grid the entire brain, right? They didn't have electrodes everywhere. They knew where their focus was going to be, frontal and temporal, because then it comes to light that on some of the more recent like MRIs and stuff like that, there looks to be temporal involvement in terms of dysplasia. So it seems to be they're going to do some pathology to see, but it seems to be the kind of dysplasia that doesn't necessarily show up right away. It was significant enough in the beginning in the frontal lobe that it was noticeable. And as time has gone on and his brain has become more developed, you can, not me, maybe you, if you saw the pictures, if you read those things, but like they can see that the dysplasia is in more places than just the frontal lobe. So the temporal lobe is now involved. It stands to reason that as time goes on, we would probably notice it in more places. One thing leads to another. I interrupt and say, you seem to be saying, if we go this route, if we go with the surgical plan, but I'm getting the impression that this is the only option that you're giving us, where then it would come down to do nothing or do this. And they were like, okay, well, we could do this and this, but in his case, so those 2 things being deep brain stimulation and a VNS, vagal nerve stimulator, which stops the seizures. Like I guess it like sends like a when the seizures start and it stops them. But in his case, he has so many, and also the success rate in terms of his brain and that as an option would be maybe 50% reduction in frequency of seizures, which that means you're going down to still having approximately 10 a day, which is still too many, and only a 20 to 30% success rate given what his brain is doing. And I was like, so no, we're not doing that then, which means the only option was a total hemispherotomy. So they no longer remove the entire hemisphere. It's not a hemispherectomy. They don't take it out, because leaving that big of a cavity, it then fills in with cerebrospinal fluid, can cause hydrocephalus. It's not ideal. So they just disconnect it. So the downside with this is if you disconnect an entire side, not only do you cause hopefully temporary paralysis on the contralateral side of the body, but you also completely nix that visual field. So now it's not an eye. It's not like he can't see out of his right eye anymore, but the visual field is gone. So if you imagine when you're looking, both eyes open, from center to the left is a visual field, and from center to the right is a visual field. Whether you have one eye, the other eye, or both eyes open, center over is still one visual field and the other, and that's what makes up your total vision. So now what they're saying is Felix is going to lose, again, contralateral side, left side of the brain is pooched, right side of the vision is gone. And it's not like we didn't know that there was a chance that this is what we had to do. What I was struggling with, and still struggling with, kind of, but obviously, like, I'm a little bit better now. What I was struggling with is the fact that it seems like every single step of the journey has been bad news, worst case scenario, have a bit of hope, sorry, it's still bad news, right? So do the first surgery. There's a chance it could fix it and he'd be fine. It helped for a little while, and then it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And then maybe we just have to disconnect the frontal lobe. I'm like, okay, I can handle that. Obviously it's not great, but I can handle that. And then, maybe we could save the vision. That'd be great. But there's a small chance that then turned into a very, very large chance that then turned into literally your only option is to disconnect the entire left side of your child's brain. So that's what we did on Wednesday, so 2 days ago. I stayed overnight till Wednesday morning. I woke Felix, Felix woke up, had a huge seizure, fell asleep. Woke up again, had a huge seizure, fell asleep. And I was like, buddy, they're going to come for us any minute. We need to go for a walk. We need to do one last walk for the next while, because we know when you come out of this, you are not going to be walking. You are not going to be jumping. You are not going to be climbing. Peter got Casper to school and he got Augie to daycare. And I said, please do your best to get here before he goes in. But Peter was very comfortable with, he knows I need to be the one to take him for my own well-being. He's my baby. Mommy takes him in for everything. Doesn't matter what procedure it is. Mommy takes him. So we wheeled down and we wheeled down with our social worker who stayed with me until Peter arrived. Luckily, Peter arrived with a few minutes to spare and they let him in because we hadn't gone past the point where like he would have to like gown up and everything. So I gowned up, I put on my little hair bonnet, I put the little booties over my Crocs, and I laid in the bed with Felix and I held him. And we had Blue's Clues playing for him on one of the child life specialists, like mini iPad. So he had Blue's Clues and we wheel into the operating room and it's like, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. And so they do their pause. And the plan was to first remove all of the leads. So 11 to 13 leads. 11 drilled, 2 not. And then reposition him into the proper orientation for surgery. So I held him in my arms while they put on the gas mask and he fell asleep. And then I had to leave him there. So I had to crawl off of the bed and say bye. And I had to leave him there. And I went back out and they brought me to Peter and I lost it. I thought I was going to pass out because of how much I was hyperventilating and crying. And it surprises me and it doesn't, because the last time it was scary, right? Like it was really scary to do the callosotomy, but we were really hopeful and it was like the first time, right? So like there was a lot less doubt in terms of like, it's gonna work. Like we're and then obviously one thing led to another and we were going back to the OR for the third time. But I think it's more because of the aggressiveness and the significance of he's going to have a really tough battle ahead of him. And when you've already had 4.5 years of challenges, I mean really 3.5, because his first year was pretty not bad, but like challenge after challenge and so much work. He's put in so much work. We've put in so much work, right? Like I have confidence that he will improve. I have confidence that he will be further ahead as a result of this hurdle. It's getting to that stage where I'm like, I'm already done. I'm already tapped out. I am already exhausted because I love him, but he is a very challenging individual. Nobody can say otherwise. He's a peach. He's an absolute doll, and we love him, and everybody loves him, and he's so friendly and happy. But he's a challenge, right? He's a challenge. It is what it is. And to think that it's going to be so much harder, even though it's hopefully short-lived, it's not the kind of short-lived where it's just a couple days. So we left the operating room zone. We went and got tea because I hadn't had anything yet. I hadn't had tea or coffee or anything. I hadn't had anything to eat because there was no way I was going to be able to eat anything. And then we went down to the pharmacy where one of my best friends works. Got some hugs. She cried. I cried. Tried to hold myself together. And then we went upstairs and we sat. And then Peter went to his office because one of his coworkers made us banana bread, which was an absolute treat, let me tell you. My mom called. Mom, if you're watching this, I appreciate your call. Peter was like, you could call your mom. I'm like, I'm just gonna cry. Sure enough, you called and it was just so it was fine. It was fine. Cue the wait. 4 to 5 hours, they said. By the 5th hour, Mommy was starting to get frantic. We had gone for many walks. Peter had acquired delicious chicken noodle soup and crackers and a cheesy bun. So he made sure I ate, which was really good. And yeah, lots of walking. Lots of checking in with people. Lots of people checking in with us. How's it going? How's it going? How's it going? And me feeling like, I don't know. I can't ask anyone because he's still in the operating room. I finally got to the point where I said to Peter, I'm going to email our social worker, Carrie. I was like, I'm going to email Carrie because if you don't ask, you don't know. I don't care if he's not done. I just want someone to tell me he's okay. That it's going well. They're just taking their time. So I emailed Carrie. Literally, send my mom a message. We don't know anything yet. And then my phone rings and it's the hospital's number. I'm like, it's the hospital. And Peter's like, answer it. It was the surgeon. He's done. Everything went very well. If you make your way down to the PCCU, so the Pediatric Critical Care Unit, we'll meet you out there. So I was like, okay, we're coming. So I called my mom, we're going. He's out. They went really well. We just have to wait now. We just have to wait to go in, but he's good. So then we had to wait a little bit extra. So we spoke with the surgeon. She did her best to look at the disconnect of the first surgery he had 2 years ago. Certain areas she couldn't look at because there was a lot of scarring, but the front and the back curves of the corpus callosum she was able to look at, and it was well disconnected. Everything else went really well. She went in through his old incision and only had to extend it a little bit so he doesn't end up with another big scar, which is I'm covered in scars. I don't care about scars. I don't care. Just help my kid get better. And then he has obviously all the little polka dots from the holes where they did the drilling. And then he puked because of the sedation, so we had to wait longer for them to clean him up. And I was starting to panic because it's Peter has to leave at 4, and it was after 3 at this point. I said to Peter, I'm staying. I had not been prepared to stay an additional night. I'd only packed clothes for 3 days. This was going into day 4, Thursday would have been day 4. I don't care, bring me a change of clothes tomorrow. We'll see you when we see you. He was doing really, really well at that point. He did wake up in the evening, agitated, trying to sit up, seemingly very uncomfortable, which is obviously. So while the nurses were getting medication for him, some morphine and stuff, I started reciting his Chicka Chicka Boom Boom book, and I got to the part where I usually pause and he fills in, oh no, and I kid you freaking not, he was like, oh no. Are you kidding me? So he was a little bit awake enough for that. And then I asked him, I was like, he tried to say mommy. I asked him if he wanted to video chat with daddy, and he was like, no. With Casper? No. With Augie? No. And I'm like, okay, well, we're doing it anyways. So I was super excited that he was talking because that was another thing they anticipated. There was a strong possibility of him not speaking for many weeks to a couple of months as his brain kind of rejigged itself, though the expectation was that he had already started lateralizing speech to the right side of his brain, which makes sense when you think he didn't speak before the split brain procedure and he started speaking after that, minimally, but still went from nothing to 15, maybe 20 words. So long story long, we stayed in the PCCU until Thursday. Yeah, Thursday afternoon, 1 o'clock-ish. We went from critical care, because everything was going well. Went from critical care up to the pediatric inpatient unit floor. Peter and Augie came for a brief visit, and then I took Augie home. Yes, Thursday I took Augie home. I went back today. The swelling has started to set in. He has a feeding tube, like an NG tube, nasogastric. Peter, if you ever watch this, I'm so sorry if I butchered that. I should know that. NG tube. He puked on Thursday night into Friday morning. Then the NG tube had gotten dislodged with that, so they had to pull it out and reinsert it. Then he yanked it out, so they reinserted it. And he has now puked a couple more times. He puked just after I got there today, so we got him all cleaned up. And you have to think, like, the amount of pressure in his head with all the swelling and then having to puke on top of that. Ugh, it was awful. It was just awful. I feel so bad for him. So they're giving him, like, anti-nausea meds. I think Peter said this evening there's an order for, like, a very strong anti-inflammatory. And I'm like, is that going to help with the swelling if the swelling's all fluid? But he looks like he has extra eyeballs under his eyelids because, like, he can't open his eyes because of the swelling. And it's only, like, day 1.5, right? Like, Thursday at 3 would have been the start of day 1, right? Because he finished Wednesday at 3. So, no, it would have been a full day by Thursday at 3. By Friday at 3, it would have been a full day. So, tomorrow, his swelling's probably going to peak if it's anything like his last surgery. But they also tried to give him some Benadryl because I feel like he keeps itching at his eyes and stuff, probably because of how uncomfortable they are and how the skin is stretched. But they don't want him to, like, scratch his actual eyeballs. So Benadryl went in. Morphine maybe, ondansetron, which is anti-nausea. Ugh, this poor kid. And he can't move his whole right side, right? Like, he spent a lot of his time sleeping, which is not unexpected. They told us to anticipate anywhere from 5 to 10 days where he literally might just be a potato. Like, he's just going to be like not happy, doesn't want to do anything. And even though you anticipate it, it's so different than what we're used to with him being so busy and being so lively, so bubbly, so happy. So, like, hi, hello, hi, right? Like, that makes it really freaking hard. So, as of right now, he is officially post-op. It is still technically too early to tell, but we have not seen any seizures. Grandma and Grandpa came for a visit today and brought us some food and brought some love to Felix and to me and Peter too. But, like, I needed hugs. Hugs were dispensed and it was really nice. Earlier, his teacher and one of his EAs came for a visit, which was absolutely wonderful. We went down to the sensory room with them. They helped him with his dinner, which was really nice. It made my evening a little bit easier. What happens next, right? So now what happens is recovery, obviously. Until he is aware and alert enough, we're just holding. We're just doing our best, getting through the days, trying to keep him very comfortable because he will need a proper neurology assessment. And then he will also need to be assessed by speech pathology in terms of swallowing and communication, but at this point, mostly swallowing, because if he is, again, once he's awake and alert enough, if he's able to eat, then the tube can come out, because he'll be, what was I saying? I don't know, speech pathology, which I said, like, I want to make sure Peter's there. He needs to do the swallowing study, not Peter, Felix needs a swallowing study. If everything there is good, then the NG tube could probably come out, which is great. The fact that it's been kept in, obviously reinserted, but kept in this long, I'm like, I know it's only been 2 days, but I'm very excited about that. Occupational therapy did stop by because someone's away next week or something. And they just said, like, to keep manipulating and moving his affected side, so his right side, so that it doesn't stiffen. We have to make sure the joints stay nice and loose, so nothing kind of like almost, yeah, like goes like really like tense. So those are the things that are happening. Middle of the road, so not short term, not necessarily long term, kind of like mid-seas. We were told to expect 2 weeks in hospital post-op, so that will bring us to May the 1st, I think, that he would be done that 2-week post-op period. And after that, he's got to do rehab. So that's a whole other can of worms. So when I say it is going to be a struggle, it is going to be a long frickin' haul. We do it because we have to. We do it because no matter how uncomfortable it is for us, how difficult it is for us, it is what Felix needs to be able to be the best Felix he can be, right? To be able to reach his potential. I would do all of this again in a heartbeat, even though it is insanely scary and stressful, to say the least. I think that's the understatement of the year. It is so much. And I don't know how I'm still standing, figuratively speaking, because obviously right now I'm sitting. The help we have had from friends and family has been heaven sent. Our school, I don't have words. Like, I know I was like a hot mess on my last video talking about like the GoFundMe and just everybody being so, like, I don't even know what word to use. Just like so invested, I guess. I don't think that I could ever properly express. And like, I like words. I like talking. I'm a very expressive individual. I do not have enough words or the right words or enough of the right words to truly express my gratitude for literally like everybody, the well wishes, the prayers coming in from all over. And like, I don't know, some people might scoff like, oh, prayers, sorrows, whatever. Freaking power of positivity, man, goes a long way. Believe in what you want, but we've got people up there looking down on our sweet Lush, making sure everything goes well, right? Like, and so now the big scary is done. Both surgeries are done. My 4.5-year-old has now had 3 brain surgeries and is now half paralyzed. And now we fight tooth and nail to get back whatever we can and then some. That's the goal. That's the plan. We have a skeleton plan. It's good enough for now. I'll keep you posted. Peace.
Hey friends. Oh, it's been a hot minute. So this first portion of the video that you just watched, if you've made it this far, and I really, really hope you have, was recorded 2 days after Felix's left hemispherotomy. It's now Tuesday, the 7th of May. So it's almost been 2 full weeks since surgery. Tomorrow will be 2 weeks in. And we were doing super, super, super well. His diet has been upgraded multiple times, so we got to reduce tube feeds yesterday. We're just doing some water feeds to help keep him hydrated because, story of my life, this kid does not hydrate like his life depends on it. He is so opposed to fluid intake, it's crazy. So NG tube is still in place. We've been doing sit to stand on the side of the bed a little bit. They got him a less supportive wheelchair, so he has to work harder to hold himself up. And we're doing our best to just keep things going. He is pretty much back to baseline in terms of his speech, which obviously is not normal for his age group, but he's back to his normal pre-surgery. He's waving. He can very minimally but still noticeably move his affected leg, so his right leg. If you try and like get him to kick both legs, he can straighten his left or his right leg. We haven't gotten much out of his arm, but he has done some little movements. So he knows where it is now. He will physically grab his arm and bring it in, or he'll try and turn it over so he can clap or say more. Like he knows where this arm is. He just doesn't really have enough of a connection yet to move it, which is okay because it's only been 2 weeks. Other exciting things. He's had a lot of visitors. He's been watching Blue's Clues. We go on little adventures because he is not hooked up all the time anymore. His feeding tube's only hooked up during feeds, and because they're doing bolus feeds now, they're not continuous, and there's less of them because he's eating a lot more like by mouth. We can go in the wheelchair and go waltzing around the hospital. So we can go to the Tim Hortons, pick up tea. We can go visit Auntie Kendra, Daddy's coworker. We can go visit Alyssa in the pharmacy, my bestie. So really great things have been happening for Felix. Do you sense a but coming? And I know that this video is super long. Like, we're past the 40-minute mark now. Bear with me. I will make this part quick because it's almost 10 o'clock and I need to get to the hospital. So, tomorrow, 2 weeks post-op, Felix is going to have a sedated MRI. Why? Why does Felix need an MRI, friends? Oh, because, he likes to lull us into a false sense of security. And just when you think everything's going well, nope, guess who had seizures on Sunday? Guess who had frickin' seizures? So I was with him on Sunday morning. I stayed Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday morning, it was still dark in the room. It was quiet. We were half asleep, and he was holding my chin as he likes to do. And then he just got really confused. And obviously, I wasn't wearing my glasses. It was dark. I couldn't see very well, but he made that scared sound like he did when he had the really bad seizures. And I was like, "Excuse you, sir? What is happening? This can't possibly be a seizure." I was in denial, 1,000%, but I made note. And then he fell asleep. And I was like, okay. And then when the neurosurgery resident came in, I mentioned it to him, and he was like, okay, so if it is a seizure, the surgery may not have been 100% successful, which we knew was a chance going in, that even if they managed to cut everything, it was a 90% chance of seizure cessation, which is pretty fantastic, but it still means there's 10%. So out of 10 kids having this done, with brains like Felix's, one person's not going to be successful. God, please don't let that person be Felix. So, he was like, I will mention it to the team, and I was like, sounds good. Peter and the boys got there so that they could do a little visit. We could trade off. I could take the boys home. I mentioned it to Peter. Keep your eyes open. Keep a solid watch on him. Because he's so much more alert and aware and mobile now that he's trying to escape and trying to pull out his tube. And you got to be on him, which is no change from his pre-surgery usual. Minus the fact that half of him doesn't really work. So I said, just keep an eye on it. And then I got everyone into the car. We got home. We went and hang out with some friends and have pizza for a little bit. But we were all exhausted. Casper was just a little bit of a mope. So we didn't stay super long. But while we were there, Peter texted he had another one of those weird episodes. And I was like, stop talking. I cannot take anymore. I can't take anymore. I can't do this. I'm so freaking done. But I don't get that option. Peter doesn't get that option. We don't get that option. We have to just push on through. So I was like, okay, keep track, because that's literally all we can do right now, it being a Sunday evening. So then I get a message in the morning as I'm getting everybody breakfast and dressed and ready for school and ready for daycare before I head to the hospital for the day. I get a text. He had a bunch of weird blips overnight. I think Peter said like 4 maybe, which, I mean, doesn't seem like a lot, but considering you're functionally working on half of the brain and you're not supposed to be seizing at all, 4 is 4 too many. So that brought the count to 6. And then I think he said like within about an hour in the morning, he had 4 very noticeable seizure-like activities. And it's hard. They're like, oh, well, does it look like the seizures from before? I'm like, yes, minus the fact that he's in postural because his side is paralyzed. He can't, like, we know that part's disconnected because it's not working. Luckily, God bless his soul, Peter got 2 of them on video, because he didn't get them right away, the first 2, and then he was like, I'm watching you, and he had his phone ready. So he got 2 on video. And then, you know, he told the nurse told neurosurge, which neurosurge had already been informed last night, so the night team mentioned it to the day team for Monday. So then we had many visitors throughout the day. We had music therapy come by, speech pathology came by, which meant he tried different foods. His diet got upgraded again, which was great for him. Lots of people. And then neurosurge came by. So like the resident, the fellow, and the surgeon, whom like we love all of them, they waltz in and the surgeon's like, so I hear you have some bad news for me. And I was just like, like, yep. So we showed them the video. We talked, and they were like, okay, it may just be that we didn't manage to disconnect all of it, because they go in through a relatively small opening to try to ensure, you know, like the least amount of risk in terms of like operation, and the best recovery. So there was, because of that small opening, you don't visualize all of the tissue very well. I don't know how that's possible, because how do you disconnect something if you can't see it? But I'm no neurosurgeon. I'm not any kind of surgeon. So she just said perhaps we didn't manage to disconnect all of it, and that's why this is happening, which we did know that was a possibility. When we did have the big discussion the Tuesday before the surgery, we knew that was a possibility. We were just very hopeful that we had made it 11 days without anything, and boom shakalaka, let's start seizing again. So the way to proceed is imaging. So then we haven't seen neuro yet, but they really can't do anything until he has an MRI. So an MRI is happening tomorrow, which is 2 weeks post-op. He will be sedated to go in to look to see if they missed any pieces. So I cannot believe I am saying this, but the best case scenario right now, wrap your head around this one. The best case scenario right now is brain surgery number 4. What the fuck? So if they do the MRI and they see that there were areas that did not get disconnected during his surgery, that is literally the best case scenario right now, because that would explain why he's still having these episodes. Then they go back in for a much smaller procedure, obviously, because the big disconnect is done. But they would go back in to disconnect whatever areas were missed. Then he has to come out of surgery, wean off the sedation, probably puke a bunch, because that's what sedation does to him. And I mean, like, me too, if I'm being honest. He has to get past the swelling again. And then we have to reassess. It's almost like we're back to where we started in terms of like the timeline. We then have to reassess. It shouldn't change the progress he's made in terms of like a lot of the motor function, but Peter and I are both concerned about how it's going to affect his speech, and not like his like actual like verbiage, but his like ability to speak, like the motor part of it, because in one of the videos you could see the affected side of him twitching, like his face was twitching. So it's like, is that part not fully disconnected? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't do brains. I don't know. So if that's the case, they go back in, then we just have to reassess swallowing, possibly start back at just tube feeds for a while until he's awake and alert enough to see kind of what we're dealing with, and then work through that progression again and see what else is happening. That's the best case scenario. Because, my friends, if they do the MRI, and the MRI shows that, no, the surgery was successful, they did disconnect the entire left side, 100%. I don't know what that means. I don't know. I have no idea what that means. Where then are the seizures coming from? Because if somebody tells me that the seizures are now on the right side of his brain, which is the only part of his brain that's left, like functionally, he only has a right brain, a right hemisphere. The left is still in there, but it is disconnected. So if it's entirely disconnected and they did not miss any pieces, why is he still seizing? And why so soon after surgery? Like, if it had been like day 3 post-op, there would be a lot less concern, because it's like, no, there's still swelling. His brain's still like, what did you do? It's been 2 weeks, essentially, or a week and a half if you really want to like split hairs. So yes, I know this video is gargantuan, and I know I've been gone. I'm sure if you have made it this far in the video, you understand where the heck I've been, that I literally have barely enough energy to, when I'm home, manage the children, do the dinnering, do the getting ready for bed, do the bubble baths, do the toothbrushing, rock Augie for what seems like a small eternity. And then by the time I get back downstairs, I don't want to do anything. The fact that I've managed to keep up with laundry and dishes is a small freaking miracle. I do have laundry to fold. I'm not doing it right now because I'm going to end this. I'm going to save it and I'm going to post it so that anybody who wants to know what's going on, I can just refer them to this. Because not that I want to sound ungrateful. I appreciate how invested everybody is, but I am so mentally tapped out that having to answer everybody's questions and reply to everybody. And yes, I know that nobody is expecting a reply instantaneously, but the way my brain works, if I don't reply to you when you message me, you might never hear from me for weeks because I will forget. Like, and there won't be a notification that you messaged me because I read your message. I just didn't reply. So that's my update. Things were going really well, and most things are still going really well. Well, we have a little problem, and by a little problem, I mean it's a freaking huge problem, and as of right this moment, that's all I know. I don't even have a skeleton plan right now. I need to make it through this week, and hopefully by Friday, the 10th of May, hopefully I know if my kid's going back to the OR and when that would be, or if we're absolutely screwed. So bear with me, and I will do my best to update you as soon as I know anything. Keep your thoughts on the positive tracks, and pray for an unfortunate but hopefully easy to do fix. That is what I need right now. I need some good news. I need them to be like, whoops, we missed a spot. It's okay. We will fix this and he shall be fine. That is, if I get bad news all the way that leads me to this moment, please, dear God, let this be the one time we get really good news. Please. Because I got nothing. I got nothing left. So, thank you. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go see my boy in the hospital. And then I'm going to drive home, and I'm going to do all the evening stuff. And I'm going to try to breathe and not have another panic attack.